I, 30F, need to start by saying that meeting my boyfriend Jackson, 36M, saved my life in many ways. A year ago, I was in the darkest place I'd ever been, drowning myself in alcohol every night, barely functioning at work, and pushing away everyone who cared about me. But to understand how I got there, I need to go back to the beginning. 2 years ago, I met Larry at the marketing firm where I worked. He joined as a new project manager, and from day one, there was this instant connection between us. Larry was charming, successful, and seemed to understand me in a way no one else did. We started having lunch together, then after work drinks, and soon we were dating. Larry was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. He was attentive, caring, and always made time for me despite his busy schedule. He told me he traveled a lot for work, which explained why we only met on certain days and why he never invited me to his place. I was so in love that I didn't question these obvious red flags. For 8 wonderful months, I believed I had found my soulmate. We talked about moving in together, about marriage, about how many kids we wanted. Larry even started looking at houses with me, saying he wanted us to build a life together. Then one day, while we were having dinner at my favorite restaurant, a woman approached our table. She introduced herself as Larry's wife. My whole world crumbled in that moment. Larry had been married for 12 years and had 3 kids. All those business trips? He was with his family? The house hunting? Just another lie to keep me hooked. His wife had discovered our messages on his phone and had been tracking him for weeks. The pain of that betrayal broke something in me. I started drinking heavily, first just in the evenings, then during lunch breaks, and finally even in the morning just to get through the day. I lost my job because I kept showing up drunk. My friends tried to help, but I pushed them all away, convinced that everyone would eventually betray me just like Larry did. That's when Jackson entered my life. He was a regular at the bar where I spent most of my evenings. One night, when I was particularly drunk and crying about Larry, Jackson sat next to me and just listened. He didn't try to fix me or judge me, he just let me talk. After that, he started showing up more often, making sure I got home safely, bringing me food, and slowly helping me see that I was worth more than what Larry had done to me. Jackson helped me get into AA and stood by me through the entire recovery process. He held my hand through the withdrawal symptoms, talked me through panic attacks, and never once made me feel ashamed of my struggles. 6 months ago, we officially started dating, and 3 months ago, I moved in with him. Everything was perfect except for one significant issue: Jackson's best friends Michael, 37M, and Darcy, 35M. They've been inseparable since elementary school. Jackson always tells stories about their childhood adventures, their college years together, and how they've remained close despite life's changes. They even work at the same company now, though in different departments. Michael is married to Sarah, 34F, a kindergarten teacher who's probably the sweetest person I've ever met. They've been married for 5 years, and Sarah has been trying to convince Michael to start a family. Darcy married Emma, 32F, 3 years ago, and she's currently 6 months pregnant with their first child, a baby girl. At first glance, both couples seemed perfect. Michael and Sarah frequently go on exotic vacations, pictures of which fill their social media. Darcy and Emma are always posting about their pregnancy journey, with Darcy calling Emma his queen and talking about how blessed he is. But I soon discovered it was all a facade. I first noticed something was off at a company Christmas party 4 months ago. Jackson couldn't attend because he had the flu, but I went to represent us. That's when I saw Michael disappear into a conference room with his young secretary. They emerged 30 minutes later, both looking disheveled. Michael saw me watching and had the audacity to wink at me. Then last month, I spotted Darcy at a club downtown when he was supposed to be on a business trip to Chicago. Emma was at home, dealing with severe morning sickness, while her husband was shoving his tongue down some random woman's throat. The worst part? When I ran into him at breakfast the next day, he acted like nothing had happened, talking about how much he missed Emma while he was away. I've tried talking to Jackson about this multiple times. Each time, he gives me the same response, that it's not our place to interfere in their marriages, and that Michael and Darcy are like brothers to him. He says every relationship has its problems, and we shouldn't judge without knowing the whole story. But I do judge them. How can I not? Every time I see Sarah talking about starting a family with Michael, or when Emma shows us ultrasound pictures while Darcy pretends to be the devoted father-to-be, I feel physically sick. The guilt of knowing the truth while these women live in blissful ignorance is eating me alive. What makes it worse is how Michael and Darcy act around us. They joke about other people's affairs, call cheaters scum, and act morally superior while living double lives themselves. Last week at Emma's baby shower, Darcy gave a speech about how Emma made him a better man, all while texting his side piece under the table. I know because I saw the woman's name flash on his phone screen when he got a message. The whole situation brings back painful memories of my time with Larry. I remember how it felt finding out that everything I believed was a lie. The humiliation, the self-doubt, the feeling that I had wasted my time and emotions on someone who never really cared about me. Sarah and Emma are heading for the same heartbreak, and I feel complicit in their eventual pain by staying silent. But Jackson insists we should stay out of it. He says exposing their affairs would only cause unnecessary drama and potentially ruin decades of friendship. I understand his loyalty to his friends, but what about loyalty to what's right? What about preventing two innocent women from experiencing the same pain I went through? I don't know what to do anymore. Every time we hang out with them, I have to pretend everything is fine. I have to smile and nod while these men play the role of perfect husbands, knowing they'll probably hook up with other women the moment their wives aren't around. The weight of this secret is becoming unbearable, but I don't want to upset Jackson either. He's done so much for me, and I know how much Michael and Darcy mean to him. Update 1: Everything finally exploded last night during what was supposed to be a celebratory dinner. Sarah had recently received a promotion at work, making her the youngest head teacher at her school. To celebrate, we all decided to meet at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown: Jackson, Michael, and Sarah, Darcy and Emma, and me. The evening started pleasantly enough. We had a nice corner table, and Emma was feeling better after weeks of terrible morning sickness. She was excitedly showing us her latest ultrasound pictures. The baby was clearly visible this time, and Emma couldn't stop talking about how the little girl already had Darcy's nose. I watched Darcy pretend to be emotional about it while discreetly checking his phone under the table. Sarah was in great spirits, showing Emma pictures of a beautiful house she and Michael were planning to buy. It had 4 bedrooms, and Sarah talked about how Michael had promised to convert one into a nursery since they were planning to start trying for a baby soon. Michael smiled and kissed her cheek, acting like the perfect husband, while I knew he had been with his secretary just 2 days ago. Throughout dinner, I noticed Michael and Darcy kept staring at our waitress. She was young, probably just out of college, with long blonde hair. They whispered and snickered between themselves, making crude comments about her body when their wives weren't paying attention. It reminded me so much of how Larry used to check out other women when he was with me, probably laughing at how stupid and naive I was. I started drinking wine to calm my nerves. Usually, I'm very careful with alcohol given my history, but tonight I needed something to help me cope with the situation. 1 glass turned into 3, then 4. The more I drank, the harder it became to watch this farce play out. When the waitress came to clear our appetizer plates, I saw Michael smoothly slip her his business card while Darcy made suggestive eyes at her. After she walked away, they exchanged knowing looks and laughed, making disgusting comments about what they'd like to do to her. Their wives were completely absorbed in their conversation about the new house and didn't notice. The alcohol was really hitting me by this point, and memories of Larry kept flooding back. I remembered how devastated I was when his wife confronted us at the restaurant. How humiliated I felt realizing everyone probably knew I was the other woman. How much I wish someone had told me the truth sooner. Then the waitress returned with our main courses. This time, Darcy was even more obvious with his flirting. He made a show of asking about the specials, leaning in too close while she spoke, while Michael openly stared at her chest. When she left, they high-fived under the table like teenagers. Something in me snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up abruptly, knocking over my wine glass in the process. The red wine spread across the white tablecloth like blood, but I barely noticed. I pointed at Michael and Darcy, my hand shaking with anger and alcohol. I turned to Sarah first. I told her everything about Michael and his secretary, how I saw them coming out of the conference room at the Christmas party, how they hadn't even tried to hide their disheveled appearance. Then I faced Emma and revealed that Darcy's business trip to Chicago last month was actually spent at Club Azure downtown, where I saw him making out with some woman while Emma was homesick with morning sickness. The restaurant went completely silent. Sarah's face drained of all color, while Emma's hands went protectively to her pregnant belly as she started crying. Jackson tried to control the situation, telling them I was drunk and that my past trauma with Larry was making me see things that weren't there. But I wasn't done. I told them about the inappropriate texts, the dating apps I'd seen on Darcy's phone, and how they'd just been hitting on the waitress right in front of their wives. By this point, other diners were openly staring at our table. Sarah suddenly grabbed Michael's phone from his jacket pocket. Despite his protests, she found dozens of explicit messages between him and his secretary. Emma checked Darcy's phone and discovered multiple dating apps and conversations with other women, including plans to meet up when he was supposedly working late. The scene that followed was chaos. Sarah threw her full glass of red wine in Michael's face, screaming about how they'd been trying for a baby while he was sleeping with his secretary. Emma was sobbing uncontrollably, asking Darcy between hiccups how he could do this to her and their unborn daughter. The restaurant manager asked us to leave after Sarah started throwing breadsticks at Michael. In the parking lot, Michael and Darcy turned their rage on me. They called me every horrible name they could think of, saying I had no right to destroy their marriages. They threatened to cut Jackson out of their lives if he didn't break up with me immediately. Sarah and Emma left together in Sarah's car, both crying and holding each other. Michael and Darcy stormed off separately, leaving me alone with Jackson. The drive home was completely silent. Jackson hasn't spoken a word to me since we got back, except to say he needed space to process everything. I'm writing this from our guest bedroom, where I've spent the night alone. I don't regret telling Sarah and Emma the truth, they deserve to know what kind of men they married. But every time I think about Jackson's silence, I feel sick to my stomach. I might have lost the man I love because I couldn't keep quiet about his friends' betrayals. Update 2: After maintaining complete silence for 2 weeks, Jackson finally confronted me yesterday. His reaction was worse than I had imagined. He came home from work, slammed the door, and started yelling before I could even say anything. Both Michael and Darcy's marriages have completely fallen apart. Sarah moved out the morning after the dinner and is staying with her sister. She went to Michael's office the next day and created a huge scene with his secretary. She threw all his clothes on the office lawn and told everyone about his cheating. The secretary quit that same day. Michael got called into HR and was removed from several important projects. Emma's situation is even worse. The stress of discovering Darcy's infidelity caused her blood pressure to spike dangerously. She had to be rushed to the hospital with pregnancy complications. She's stable now, and thankfully the baby is okay, but her doctor has ordered complete bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. She's staying at her parents' house and has already contacted a divorce lawyer. Jackson was livid about how publicly I exposed everything. He said I had no right to blow up 2 marriages just because I was triggered by my past with Larry. According to him, I could have handled it privately or minded my own business. He said I not only humiliated Michael and Darcy but also their wives by creating such a scene at the restaurant. What made everything worse was that Michael and Darcy had given Jackson an ultimatum. Either he breaks up with me, or they'll end their 25-year friendship. They're blaming me for destroying their marriages and say they can't be friends with someone who would stay with a vindictive homewrecker like me. We had a massive fight about it. I reminded Jackson how he had helped me when I was destroying myself after Larry's betrayal. How could he now defend 2 men who were doing the exact same thing to their wives? I asked him if he would have preferred that Larry's wife never told me the truth. Would he have rather found me dead from alcohol poisoning, never knowing why the man I loved betrayed me? Jackson shot back saying it wasn't about defending them, it was about me overstepping boundaries and making decisions that weren't mine to make. He said Michael and Darcy were like brothers to him, and now he's lost them because I couldn't control myself. He even suggested that maybe I was jealous of their happy marriages and wanted to destroy them. That's when I really lost it. I told him their marriages weren't happy, they were built on lies just like my relationship with Larry was. I asked him if he would keep quiet if he knew I was cheating on him. His silence spoke volumes. The fight continued for hours. Jackson brought up how Michael and Darcy had always been there for him. How they supported him through his parents' divorce, helped him find his first job, and were the first to welcome me into their group despite my questionable past with alcohol. He stormed out around midnight and didn't come home until morning. When he returned, he had a packed bag with him. He said he needed time away from me to think about everything. He's gone to stay with his sister for a while. Before leaving, he said he doesn't know if he can forgive me for costing him his best friends. I've been sitting in our empty apartment since he left, wondering if I did the right thing. Sarah called me yesterday, crying and thanking me for telling her the truth. She said she had suspected something was wrong but had been too afraid to look deeper. She found out Michael had been sleeping with his secretary for over a year. Emma texted me this morning. She said that while she wishes she had found out differently, she's glad she knows before the baby arrives. Her parents are helping her set up a nursery at their house, and she's decided to give the baby her maiden name. But despite knowing I did the right thing, watching Jackson walk out that door broke my heart. The man who helped me through my darkest time might never forgive me for exposing his friends' betrayals. I keep replaying the dinner in my head, wondering if I could have handled it differently. But then I remember the look on Sarah's face when she saw those messages, and Emma's hands protectively covering her pregnant belly as she cried, and I know I couldn't have stayed silent. Update 3: It's been 3 months since everything fell apart, and I finally feel ready to share how things ended. After staying with his sister for 2 weeks, Jackson came back home, but things were never the same between us. He spent most of his time at work or locked in the guest room, barely speaking to me except when necessary. I tried to make things work. I apologized for the public way I handled the situation, though not for telling the truth. I suggested couples counseling, but Jackson refused, saying the problem wasn't our relationship, it was my inability to mind my own business. The final breaking point came last week. I was doing laundry when I overheard Jackson on the phone with Michael in the guest room. He was apologizing for not controlling his girlfriend better and promising to fix things. He told Michael that I was just damaged from my past with Larry, and that he could convince me to apologize publicly for spreading lies about them. That conversation made me realize that Jackson wasn't the man I thought he was. The person who had held me through withdrawal symptoms, who had shown such compassion when I was struggling with Larry's betrayal, was now actively trying to help cover up his friend's cheating. He was willing to make me look like a liar just to salvage his friendships. I waited until he left for work the next day, packed all my things, and moved out. I found a small apartment across town and sent him a message saying it was over. He tried calling multiple times, then showed up at my workplace. He said he was just trying to keep peace between everyone, that losing his best friends was killing him. I told him that I couldn't be with someone who would choose to support cheaters over doing what's right. Sarah's divorce from Michael is almost finalized now. She sold their house and has been excelling at her new job as a principal at a different school. She started dating one of the dads from her old school, someone who had also gone through a divorce because of cheating. They're taking things slow, but she seems happier than I've ever seen her. Emma gave birth to a healthy baby girl last week. She named her Lily, after her grandmother, and gave her her maiden name. She's fighting for full custody and will likely get it given Darcy's history of infidelity and the stress he caused during her pregnancy. Her parents, who had always treated Darcy like a son, have completely cut contact with him. Michael and Darcy aren't doing so well. After the secretary quit, rumors spread at their company. Michael was passed over for a major promotion he was supposed to get. Darcy's real estate business has taken a hit since Emma's father was one of his biggest investors. They're both living in Darcy's old bachelor pad, still trying to convince everyone that I'm the villain who ruined their perfect lives. Jackson sends me texts sometimes, usually late at night, saying he misses me and that we can work things out. But I've realized that what I thought was strength in him, his loyalty to his friends, was actually cowardice. He'd rather support wrong actions than risk losing old friendships. I've been sober for 3 months now, despite everything that's happened. Sarah, Emma, and I have become close friends. We meet for coffee every week, and I'm going to be Lily's godmother. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you relationships, but I'd rather be alone than silence my conscience to keep people happy. I don't regret telling those women the truth, and I never will. As Emma said to me yesterday, you saved us from wasting more years of our lives with men who didn't deserve us. That means more to me than any friendship or relationship ever could.